Hi, in this video I am to present a paper prepared in context of Israeli cinema, culture, values, art course. This course introduced students, and I'm to quote directly, to Israeli cinema as it evolved from the 1930s to the present. By studying future films and documentaries, this course looks at film as a vehicle through which to explore questions of history, identity, conflict and reconciliation, war and peace, gender, ethnicity, the Holocaust, and the tensions between individual and collective values. Course taught by Professor Sara Horowitz, professor at the Department of Humanities and Center for Jewish Studies at York University. Published author of numerous books, Sara Horowitz's area of specialization is comparative literature and Jewish studies. Research interests include arts and culture, comparative literature, Jewish studies, Holocaust studies. Author of articles which could be also found online at Jewish Women's Archive. And the link is to right now appear on the screen. Let's return to the paper. The topic of the paper is depictions of domestic violence in Israeli cinema. Spousal abuse within Haredi and secular societies in Israel. Examination of domestic violence within Haredi and secular societies in the State of Israel through the prism of Israeli cinema. Hereinafter, the concept of domestic violence is used to define emotional, verbal, spiritual, and/or physical spousal abuse. Domestic violence is a phenomenon which spared no nation, culture, or religion. Neither Haredi nor secular society in Israel have been left without attention. Israeli cinema contains some depictions of the introduced issue. How is domestic violence depicted within Haredi and secular societies in Israeli cinema? How truthful are these depictions? Those are the questions which have been answered in this paper. Overview. Domestic violence within Haredi and secular societies in the State of Israel is lacking statistical data to enable reliable evaluation of the situation. In Israel, domestic violence is addressed by two authorities. The Haredim rely on the rabbinic authority as the dominant phase among community and family. Haredi men and women are obedient to its rulings. National authority, for example the police, might become involved under severe pretenses. When all other options were exhausted and threat was not eliminated successfully through localized communal efforts. The secular society is under the regulation of the national authority. Israeli jurisprudence includes prevention of violence in the family law from 5751, which is 1991, and prevention of harassment by threats law, which is 5762, which is 2001. Since Knesset passed Amendment number 11 on the 4th of March 2008, both laws authorize the court to issue an order of protection. Nonetheless, the State of Israel is under the regulations of the secular religious status quo. The status quo is widely believed to originate from a letter sent to the Haredi Agudat Israel by David Ben-Gurion as chairman of the Hasachnut HaYehudit El Eretz Israel in 1947. This later became the foundation for regulating the relation between religion and the state. It is the document responsible for prevention of established relations, for preservation of established relations, allocating space only for minor alternations to be made. The deficiency of division between religion and the state has proven to be problematic. There are 14 shelters in Israel. Their statistics reveal means for establishment of more insightful and factual estimates of domestic violence within Haredi and secular Jewish population. Though the evaluation of the issue is still limited due to the unreported cases which are weighted by the Haredim. Examining depictions of domestic violence in Kadosh, Merhak, Negia, and Kirot. Israeli cinema is more frequent in its depiction of domestic violence within the Haredi sector, almost leaving the secular to a non-Israeli cinematographer. This is slightly ironic because the affected society itself, which is approaching the issue with respect to their inner narrative, avoids depicting it, and not without a reason. Haredi society's certain social norm and perception of the issue is embedded in their belief that the details of the abuse would cause greater damage than the benefit that might be achieved from saving a life of one woman. The two cinematographic works which are to be examined in context of domestic violence within Haredi society in Israel are Kadosh from 1999 and Merhak Negia from 2006. Kadosh was directed by Amos Gitai and, unlike majority of his works, has gained popularity with an Israeli audiences. The film was criticized for its anti-religious themes, nonetheless also proved successful overseas. The very essence of the drama is critical depiction of women's status within Haredi society. Patriarchy, ultra-Orthodox Judaism, Mea Shearim, neighborhood. Cage, locked from the inside by ideological man. The setting in which the husband chasing his wife with a belt is not exactly an unexpected turn of events. Furthermore, the reproductive role of a woman is heavily brought forth throughout Gitai's reflection of the Haredim in Kadosh. The film hardly leads to an unquestionably positive impression of the Haredi Jews or their insulated community. How truthful is the depiction set forth by the Israeli film Kadosh? Kadosh shows a domestic violence incident after Yosef's wife, Malka, returns from seeing the man she loves outside her Haredi community. Earlier, she is seen in bed with her husband, in her monologue implying that she is unable to experience a sense of intimacy with him. Malka's rebellious behavior is ongoing. Rav David Yosef of the Har Nov neighborhood in Jerusalem and the head of Yahweh Da'at Kollel states, sometimes the violence is caused by the woman. She upsets him, her husband, and causes him to lose control. So of course one needs to treat the husband, but on the other hand, it doesn't mean that the woman is 100% right. In his conversation with Korman, the Rav also clarifies that the husband's loss of self-control should not be treated lightly. Chazal say that every Jew who hits a fellow Jew is called an evil person, and more so if he hits his wife. Amos Gittai has incorporated the general Haredi thought on the matter in his depiction of domestic violence. Kadosh contains women's provocation while still denouncing men's frustration when it results in loss of self-control and an outburst of violence instead of an attempt to connect with his wife based on his wisdom as a husband and rabbinism. The degree to which Gittai's portrayal of Haredi She'arim community is unbiased and not over-dramatized might be controversial. However, the depiction of domestic violence is seemingly truthful. The next Israeli cinematographic work to be examined is Merhak Negia. Unlike in Kadosh, the issue of domestic violence is not expected and unfolds as a story in shadow of the main plot. But it adds to more detailed and extensive familiarization of the viewer with the Haredi. Merhak Negia takes place in Bnei Brak, a center of Haredi Judaism just east of Tel Aviv. The mini-series were created by Zafrir Kochanovsky, Ronit Weiss-Berkowitz, and Ron Ninio, who has also directed these 8 episodes. Merhak Negia was one of the Israeli shows to become secured for production in America. How truthful is the depiction set forth by the Israeli miniseries Merhak Negia? Ita and Aria Leib are a young Haredi couple who were recently united through an arranged marriage. Ita is devoted to being a good wife. Aria Leib is also fond of his newly acquired role as a husband. Merhak Negia introduces domestic violence in context of rabbinic interpretations. Sometimes abusive religious men substitute the original interpretations by the spurious and therefore conveniently justify the abuse on the level of halacha. Aria Leib expresses concern about intimacy with his wife being stained by sin through his wife's initiative. After the wife is beaten by her husband for provocative behavior towards him, she becomes accused of obstructing his fulfillment of mitzvah by crying when the husband is attempting to initiate sexual contact. Aria Leib highlights that Ita, being his wife, will know her place. While Merhak Negia does not complicate the narrative with expanding on the teachings, an example from an external source could be Isha keshara osa ratzon ba'ala, meaning a good woman does what her husband wants of her. The two purposes of marriage are posterity and companionship. Wife's duties are extensively outlined in rabbinic literature. In his Sanchino Babylonian Talmud's foreword to Seder Nashim, Chief Rabbi Dr. Hertz wrote, "A wife is man's other self. All that man's nature demands for its completion physically, socially, and spiritually." Does Arech Leiv's nature demand for physical, social, and spiritual abuse of his other self? The Mishnah contains Rabba's statement that it would be a meritorious act to divorce a bad wife. Furthermore, additional argumentation concerned with perception of women could be introduced through the four matriarchs: Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Sarah was the first matriarch, wife of Abraham, who was respectively the first patriarch. Abraham recognized and respected Sarah's superiority. Tamar Kadari, PhD in Midrash at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, includes in her article Sarah, Midrash, and Agadah. The rabbis applied to Sarah Proverbs 12:4. A capable wife, Eshet Hayil, is a crown for her husband. While prophetic ability and God's emphasis are not signification of women in general, the story of Sarah leaves space for thought about women's nature, even with all due respect for major patriarchal importance. The film Merhak Nagia also reflects on the women's shame as a result of domestic violence and negative self-perception inflicted by the erroneous interpretations. Ida is afraid of her marital problems to become known as and shouts out Rachel's attempts to address the issue. Ida's fears are intensified by the Haredi perception of women who were not able to keep a family and divorced. Since Rochale does make Ida's situation known to the rabbinic authority, Rabbi does what is in his power to intervene. So, effectiveness of the intervention is complicated by Arech Leiv's permanent residence in Brooklyn, where the couple is to live. Arech Leiv's rabbi in Brooklyn exemplifies the difference in views and supports the idea that some rabbinic authorities are controversial in their perceptions. Example of good woman, capable wife, family norms and or discipline. Approaching the rabbinic authority and the effort of rabbanim to intervene are elements of the real-life process when a case of domestic violence is addressed in Haredi society. The creators of Merhak Nagia displayed impressive diligence in their depiction of domestic violence within Haredi society in Israel. With consideration of the aforementioned arguments, the Merhak Nagia's depiction is truthful. Divorce as a form of emotional abuse. In order for a married Jewish couple to become divorced in Beit Din, the man is required to give a woman a document, which is called get. This procedure is required by halacha. The get would terminate a Jewish marriage and serve as certification according to which a man and a woman are considered free to remarry under the Jewish law. The only other option of a marriage to become legally dissolved is due to a documented death of a spouse. Therefore, if the man does not provide the woman with a get, or a man's death is unconfirmed, or he is not available to provide the get due to some other circumstances, a woman becomes an abuna, considered to be a chained woman. Domestic violence is a potential reason for a wife to seek divorce, though not exclusively. When continuing the union is no longer viable and the termination of marriage is initiated, possibility of emotional abuse arises. Recent Israeli film, or at the time the paper was written in 2014, actually 2014-2015 year, but it was by the end of the school year, so 2015. And recent Israeli film get the trial of Vivian Amsalam, 2014, conveys the divorce and its procedural ability to trap a woman and a husband to remain in control through the rabbinic legal system, which has no alternative solution to unchaining a woman. So it could be debated whether the get, the trial of Vivian Amsalam, is conveying an unbiased image of the Beit Din and how problematic it is to successfully receive a get on average. An alternative is not available. However, the Beit Din can not only encourage to seek reconciliation, but also to order for a man to give a woman a get and enforce their order by sanctions. While Beit Din is often inclined to support attempts to keep a family together, especially when children are involved, consideration for involved parties and circumstances surrounding the divorce is present. Thinking of a divorce to be different for Jews in Israeli secular society could be an optimistic assumption. It is the religious law that governs family matters in the state of Israel, which is the result of previously introduced religious secular status quo. Therefore, termination of Jewish marriage would still lead to Beit Din and undergoing the aforementioned procedure. Concluding remarks. Whether intentional or natural occurrence, the Israeli cinematographer often shares with their audiences matters as they perceive them and as those actually occur in the state of Israel. The issue of domestic violence within Haredi and secular societies in Israel is depicted with a strong sense of realism. This might not always be entirely evident to non-Israeli audiences. However, research and analysis facilitate understanding of Israel's distinct characteristics, confirming the quality of depictions found in Israeli cinema. Thank you for watching, and the bibliography will follow right at the end of this video. Special thank you extends to teaching assistant Max Sawyer, who taught and assisted, but led the tutorials in the Jewish Experience, Symbiosis and Rejection course I took at York University. For directing me towards the term of secular religious status quo in my research of Israel's secular authority.